Welcome to Maryland Department of Labor Professional Development on Lesson Plans. I'm Ramona Kunkel, and I am an Adult Education Program Specialist at the Maryland Department of Labor. So I want to welcome you and thank you for attending. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to cover the purpose of lesson plans, the steps for lesson planning, learner-centered lessons, lesson plan examples, provide you with some resources, and then the assignment that will take place during our Saturday session. So let's start off with the purpose of lesson plans. I want you to take 1 or 2 minutes and just to think about what you think is the purpose of lesson plans. If you need to hit pause, go ahead and do that, but just take a moment to think about this question and how you would answer it. Here are some purposes for lesson plans. 1, it's a roadmap for the day's instruction. Helps you think through the details. It helps with differentiated lessons. It also helps with time management. Helps you prepare the delivery of the lesson, helps you plan for materials beyond the textbook. It provides structure, provides continuity, and it provides a written record of the material covered. We're going to take each one of these more in depth. So let's first look at this as a roadmap. Just like you wouldn't want to start out on a trip without any idea of where you're going. Same idea for lesson plans. You want to have a clear idea of where you're starting and where you will end. Lesson plans also help you keep on track. Now that doesn't mean that you can't go a little off track and take some detours. That's okay. But at some point you want to get back on the main road. And that's what lesson plans can help you do. It also helps you think through the details of the lesson. So here are some questions that a lesson plan, as you work through it, will help you answer. And these are questions that you want to think about as you're developing your lesson plan. What am I going to teach? What's the topic? What subject area? What are my learners going to learn? What materials will I use? Who is doing the activity and what activities? Sometimes it will be the instructor doing the activity and other times it should be the learner. When will each topic be taught? So providing a timeline. Why am I teaching this topic? You should have some reason for delivering this instruction. How will I teach this topic? And how am I going to figure out if my learners have mastered the material that I presented? It also helps with differentiated lessons. It will help you plan with lessons for individual learners that need specific instruction because they're at a slightly different level, and also for group learning. So you might have a group of learners that are working on a specific task, and then you can show that in your lesson plan so that when you get to the actual instruction, you have it already laid out. It also helps for planning future instruction and for organization. You have a record to go back to so that you can see what each of those learners worked on and where we need to get to as they progress through their instruction. When you're dealing with multiple levels in one class, it's very difficult to remember what each learner or what each group of learners worked on from one class to the next. So again, you want to have a written record of what they worked on. It also helps with time management. By figuring out what materials you need, it helps you figure out how long that lesson should take. You don't want to put in too many materials that it takes longer than what is a reasonable amount of time for that topic. You also want to estimate how long it's going to take you to deliver that instruction. Now, you want to be flexible because not all lessons go as we plan. Some lessons take much longer than we anticipate, and some take much less time than what we anticipate. You want to be able to make adjustments, which can include moving parts of a lesson to the next class time. If you've determined that you've spent 45 minutes or an hour on a specific topic, and you clearly are not going to get through all the material that you had hoped to, you can just make a break and then take that instruction and move it to the next class time. It also helps with you being prepared. Learners know when an instructor is not prepared, and it can make the big difference in your relationship to your learners. Learners know that you've actually taken time to prepare that lesson and that you aren't just winging it. It helps keep you organized, and it shows your learner that you care and that you take teaching seriously. It also helps you think through materials that go beyond a textbook. Yes, there's a time and a place for a textbook and for worksheets, but your lesson should not only revolve around a textbook and around worksheets. This can help you think through interactive activities, some digital learning, which is really important, especially in virtual classrooms. Helps you think through individual, pair, and small group work, project-based learning, and even some creative learning, such as writing a poem or acting out a play, or even drawing to help cement those ideas that they are learning. It also gives your class some structure. Learners need structure, and learners want to know what to expect. So if you have a lesson plan and you lay out for your learners, here's what we're going to learn tonight. They know what to expect. They know what's coming up. Their lives are already very chaotic and unpredictable. When you have structure in your lesson and in your classroom, it provides a less stressful environment. And that should be a goal for all instructors, for our learners. It also provides some continuity. So ideally, you want to look at the last lesson plan that you created, and then the next lesson plan should build on those tasks and skills that were introduced in the previous lesson. It also will then provide a guide for your next lesson. So each lesson should build on one another. It is also a written record of what you've covered. If administration should happen to ask what you are covering in your classroom, you have documentation that you can present to your instructional specialist, your director, whoever might be asking for that information of what topics you covered in your classroom. I think all of us have had learners that claim that we didn't teach them anything, but now you have proof that you did and what you covered. And it's documentation for future reference. If you're going to teach that class again, it can also serve as a template for future lessons. Yes, each class has its own dynamics and there will need to be some tweaking, but now you already have the foundation and the basics for future lessons. We're going to look at the steps for lesson planning. So the first step is to look at the previous lesson. You want to review the lesson and what were the learners, what progress did the learners make and what challenges did they have? So if they had some challenges, that might be something that you want to cover in your next lesson. If they had some progress, that's great. Now you know what you can build on, is you can use that as a foundation for the next lesson. Think through what worked, what didn't work. Some programs create unit plans. So if your program has a unit plan, you want to review that and then make sure that your lesson is tying back to that unit plan. Step 2, objectives. You want to have objectives. Every lesson should have an objective of what you want your learners to be able to do. I think most of us have seen, students will be able to. Sometimes it's just abbreviated as SWBAT. Ideally, you also want to either share verbally or in some sort of a presentation or on the board what the objectives are for that lesson and for that class. It ties back to giving structure so that students know what to expect. Step 3, you want to think through what skills are going to be needed. What technology am I going to use? What cognitive skills are going to be needed for this lesson? It's going to tie into workplace skills and also life skills. Step 4, you want to think through what activities is your lesson going to include. It's going to include puzzles, when feasible, field trips, videos, using manipulatives, and even having guest speakers. Especially in a virtual classroom, guest speakers can really be valuable. It's a great way to mix it up, and being remote makes it even easier for a guest speaker to just hop on and present some information. Step 5, you want to write your lesson plan. And ideally, it should include all these components. It should have a lesson title so that anybody looking at it knows right off the bat what is included in that lesson plan. Again, your objectives. What are your learners going to be able to do by the end of the lesson? What materials are you going to use? Once again, thinking beyond just the textbook. How are you going to present the information? How is this lesson going to be applied to the student's workplace or to their everyday life situations? And how are you going to evaluate it? How are you going to know that your learners have mastered the material that was presented? Here's a slide that has all 5 of those steps all in one place for just a nice, easy reference. We're going to look real quickly at learner-centered lessons. What is a learner-centered instruction? Ideally, it should have less instructor talk and more learner talk. Learners should be part of the decision-making process as to what they learn and how they learn. Learners should be able to collaborate with others, whether it's in small groups, in large groups, even with the instructor. And the lesson should be geared towards the interests of the learner. Here's a little diagram to show that on the left-hand side, we have teacher-centered instruction where the teacher is just standing up there and delivering the instruction. Kind of like a lecture type situation. On the right-hand side, we have student-centered. Yes, you need to have content, you have to have instructional strategies and assessment, but you also want to think about the environment. What learning environment are you creating for your learners? You want to have interactions and you want to make sure that you have some active engagement. Here's another visual diagram of student-centered learning. Again, you want to have some active learning and ongoing reflection. Students should be thinking about what they're learning. Make sure that this is not your instruction is not a one-size-fits-all. It should be ideally geared towards your set of students. Recognize that there's diversity and that your learners have different experiences and background knowledge. Let your learners have control and make some choices about their learning. It should enable higher order thinking, such as critical thinking skills. And there should be some cooperation between student and the instructor, but also between the learners themselves. We're going to look at some lesson plan examples. I will tell you that these lesson plan examples come from the ABE framework. Every instructional specialist has access to the ABE framework. If you have not seen it or you want to have access, please ask your instructional specialist for access to that, especially the lesson plan examples. We included them for the purpose of instructors being able to have examples that they can use for their instruction. We're going to look at one example here. This is an ABE level 1, and it's identifying and using contractions. The instructor here showed that it should take approximately 40 minutes. Again, you're not held to that, but it helps you think through about how long this instruction should take so that you know how much to cover within your class period. We have the objectives. It includes the materials, shows how the instructor is going to introduce this lesson. Here's a little mini lesson that includes a Khan Academy video that with the link, the instructor can then just very quickly click on that link and bring it up. It includes some group practice and individual practice, as well as an evaluation and assessment. It has homework and even some digital literacy application. This is really important, especially in virtual settings. We're going to look at a second example. This is for an ABE level 3. It is a financial literacy lesson. There's a real quick little synopsis of what this lesson is going to cover. It has the objectives, and as you can see, the first one starts with the students will be able to. And then also students will challenge each other with what activity is going to take place. It shows the materials here. And it even includes some prepare ahead of time. So that's a visual reminder to that instructor or to another instructor who might want to use this lesson plan that they need to do some prep work and what they need to do before the lesson. There's also some technology, and you'll notice that it includes using websites like Amazon.com and Walmart.com. Get creative. Think outside just your traditional Burlington English or Aztec. Here's the practice, how the learners are going to learn this material. Here's the assessment, and then the homework in this particular lesson plan just shows that the homework and follow-up will be as needed and determined by the instructor. I would recommend that even if you do this, that you want to think through some basic ideas of what you would want homework to include, so that you're not just kind of trying to figure it out on the fly at the last minute. We're going to look at one more example. This is for a higher level class. It's an ABE level 5. We're getting closer to the GED level. This program gives the CASAS, so it has it includes the CASAS competencies. This program also requires that instructors tie it to the CCRS. So this instructor has included that information. You see on the left-hand side, the list of all the materials. Again, some links. The instructor can very quickly click on those links and get to that information. In the middle, we have the lesson objectives. We have a real quick warm-up and introduction, then the presentation, then the practice and the application. Because this class is so close to the GED level, it also includes the GED skills that tie to the GED test, as well as some vocabulary, and then the formative assessment. I've included some resources. There's a handout that's attached to this presentation that includes the resources, but I just want to show you them here. There are some templates and some articles that give you some information about creating lesson plans for adults. They're relatively short, so it shouldn't take you too long to get through that information. There's one on this page that I want to draw your attention to, and it's the second one on this list. It's from Literacy Minnesota. I would highly recommend that you look at their information. Literacy Minnesota puts out some incredible content. This is free, but you will have to provide your information, and they just do that for collecting, for record keeping and collecting that information. They want to know who is accessing their information, but it's very good. If you look at nothing else, look at Literacy Minnesota's information. We're going to talk about the assignment. For the purpose of this professional development, you're going to create a lesson plan using one of the following templates. You can either use a lesson plan example that is in the ABE framework. You can use one of the lesson plan templates from the resources, or you can use a lesson plan template that is required by your program. If your program requires a specific template, that is the one that you are going to use for the purpose of this professional development activity. Your lesson plan can be any level and it can be any topic. Once you create your lesson plan, you are going to use that lesson plan to deliver the instruction. Once you do that, you're going to reflect on this experience. This is also put into a document that's attached to this presentation for you to refer back and be able to use this for our follow-up session. These are questions that you want to reflect on, and we will discuss them in small groups. Why did you choose the lesson plan template that you used? And your answer could be as simple as, because this is the one my program requires, and that's perfectly fine. What made that template difficult to use? What made it easy to use? Did it include the components that are listed here? And those are the ones that we talked about earlier. And what did you learn from creating your lesson plan? Once you've done that, you then want to reflect on how your lesson plan worked for delivering your lesson. These are the questions you're going to think about. Was my lesson learner-centered? What demonstrates that it was? And is there anything that I could have done to make it more learner-centered? How did your lesson plan help you when teaching the lesson? What worked well with the lesson? Did your lesson plan help you stay on track? If you got off track, did it help you get back on track? And how might you revise your lesson for the next time? I want to stress that this is a learning opportunity. It's okay if this does not go perfectly. It's okay if there are some things that went a little off kilter. It's all part of learning about lesson plans and then using them for delivering your instruction. I want to thank you for participating in our professional development on lesson plans. Here is my contact information. If you have any questions or anything you want to maybe brainstorm, I am more than happy to talk about your lesson plan or answer any questions. The easiest way to reach me is by email, and my email address is there. I generally get back the same day as I get an email, so please feel free to reach out if you feel the need to. Again, I want to thank you for your time and your attention. Good luck with your lesson plan and with your lesson, and thank you for your participation.